Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea,
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free!
Gaza, Gaza, don't you cry.
Gaza, Gaza, don't you cry!
Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me well, or should I turn this up? Turn it up? Okay. Okay. So we're all here. I want to say welcome first. Thank you all for coming. So as we're here today to protest Palestine and the planned annexation that was set to begin on July 1st, and just protest the occupation in general and freedom for Palestinian lives. So I think we should just get started right away. I'll introduce myself. My name is Hala. I am a senior at UConn, and
My name is Bassett. I'm also a senior at UConn.
my name's Basla. I'm a junior at UConn.
My name is Muhammad. I'm also a junior at UConn.
My name's Yahsan and I'm going to be a sophomore at UConn.
My name is Dina, and I'm a junior at UConn.
My name is Adna and I'm a senior at UConn.
Great. That's the whole SGP board. So this is organized by the Students for Justice in Palestine through UConn. And so logistics first. If you don't have a mask, put one on. There are masks over there at that table right on the corner over there. Gloves, water bottles, anything else. A medic kit's right here if anything happens. And I think it's at the start. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to set up like a background for anybody who may not know everything about what's happening over there. So first it's going to be Hala, who's talking about the history.
Take my mask off. Okay, hi everyone. So I'm just going to give a brief history about really what's been going on since the beginning of the 20th century and how we got to this point. So on November 2nd, 1917, the Balfour Declaration promised to help establish a Jewish state on Palestinian land. Zionism emerged as a political ideology that is also a settler colonial movement. Following World War I, Palestine became under British control, which was previously under the Ottoman Empire. Moving to World War II, the United Nations Partition Plan in 1947 allocated 55% of Palestine to the Jewish state and 42% to the Arab state. The city of Jerusalem was placed under international control and international administration. David Ben-Gurion, the prime minister of the Jewish state at the time, and also the first prime minister of Israel, said that the new borders will be determined by force and not by the partition resolution. Escalation between Zionist militias and Arabs continued through 1948. This leads us to arguably the most crucial point in Palestinian history. May 15, 1948, also known as the Nakba, drove an estimated 750,000 Palestinians out of their homes and pushed hundreds of thousands of Palestinians into refugee camps and neighboring countries. More than 400 cities and towns were destroyed and taken over by Israeli forces. The Nakba is a crucial event in understanding how the systemic oppression, disposition, and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians started and how it continues to this day. From June 5th to June 10th, 1967, also known as the Six-Day War, Israel occupied the remainder of Palestine. The rest of the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights, which belonged to Syria. Palestinians still fought long and hard as the First Intifada erupts in 1987. Unarmed Palestinians were fighting at the forefront against Israeli forces that were equipped with weapons that this very country helped supply. In 2000, the Second Intifada began. Throughout this Intifada, a siege on the entirety of Palestine was enforced by Israel, and in 2002, Israel added, yet again, another human rights violation, and the construction of the wall around the West Bank was constructed. The International Court of Justice ruled that the construction was illegal and ordered it to be stopped, yet Israel has yet to abide by this ruling. Israeli forces continued with their list of human rights violations by demolishing an estimated 5,000 homes, during the Second Intifada. A couple years ago in 2017, some of you may recall Donald Trump moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and makes any future peace talks less and less likely. The United States is one of the few countries to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which goes against all UN declarations. Not only is this a huge setback for Palestinians, it makes our fight even more difficult. To make matters worse, Donald Trump and Netanyahu, the current Prime Minister of Israel, drafted a peace plan that transferred even more land by enclaving and encircling Palestinians into neighborhoods that had already been overcrowded. This brings us to today. Although the July 1st annexation has not been carried through, it still leaves the question of when it is going to be. And that's just a brief history. And it's my pleasure to introduce Ghufran Al-Babadi from Tree of Life Educational Fund.
Everyone, peace be upon you all. My name is Ghufran Al-Babidi. I am the president of Tree of Life Educational Fund. Thanks to UConn for the invitation to speak today, especially the SJP, and I'm very happy to be with you all today. I am here today to share a story of a holy land, the land of Canaan, Palestine. As Mahmoud Darwish, a Palestinian poet, says, it was called Palestine, and its name will continue to be called Palestine. At one time, it was a place where Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived together in peace and harmony. I personally visited Palestine at least 6 times, but in none of those visits, I was able to recognize that peace and harmony that I always heard about. I saw the checkpoints and I went through them every time I wanted to pray at the Aqsa Mosque, as well as every time I wanted to travel from one city to another. So the question that came to my mind, where did the peace and harmony go? Let's look to the map. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration made a commitment to turn Palestine into a homeland for Jews. In 1922, the League of Nations approved a British mandate for Palestine with the aim of transforming Palestine to a homeland for Jews around the world. In 1947, the UN Resolution 101 set forth a plan to partition Palestine. And in 1948 was the declaration of the establishment of the State of Israel, with an immediate American recognition of it. This period marked a major turning point in history. During the year of 1948, more than 80% of the Palestinians left the area of 80% of historical Palestine, which was captured by the Zionists. The United Nations approved a plan to divide Palestine into 2 separate states, one called Israel and one called Palestine. And the city of Jerusalem, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians all have holy sites, became a special international zone. In 1967, Israel occupied the remaining 22% of historical Palestine, Gaza Strip, West Bank, and as well as the Syrian Golan Heights and the Egyptian Sinai. Immediately after the Israeli occupation to Palestine, Israel began building colonial settlement for Jews on the Palestinian land. Day after day, this occupation becomes much more painful for the Palestinians by dividing the Palestinian land and making it much more difficult for the Palestinians to reach to their own families. Children to reach to their own schools, and farmers to reach to their own ancient farms. I have seen the struggles in my own eyes, and I have witnessed the injustice as well. And I have felt the anger burning inside my heart, reminding me of the painful struggle for the human rights of the Palestinian people. As angry as this made me on my journeys, I have to mention how inspired I was of the spirit of the people that I met and listened to their stories. Palestinian and Jews who are struggling together for equality and justice for all. I have met Dawood Nasser, a Palestinian farmer in Bethlehem area, who wrote on a large stone in front of his farm, "We refuse to be enemies." I have met Lama Abed from Gaza, a 14 years old girl who lived under the siege of Gaza. This girl, just like every other child, has a lot of dreams, many dreams, to become a doctor, to become a TV presenter, to own a huge farm that full of cows and become a cowgirl in order to support the children in her own community. Lama told me many times that despite all the struggle she's going through, she will refuse to dream. She will continue to dream no matter what. I also met Sahar Vardi, a young Jewish lady who has served 3 prison sentences for her refusal to be recruited into the Israeli military service. I love how she continues to wear a t-shirt that says, "I refuse to occupy." I have met also Taysir Murray, a Syrian activist who is struggling to keep the Syrian identity alive at the Golan Heights. The Syrians today at the Golan Heights are living under the Israeli occupation, and still they are refusing the Israeli ID that would take away the Syrian identity from them. So while I was visiting the Golan Heights, my country, Syria, with my little daughter, Sana, 8 years old, I got shocked with Trump's recognition of the Golan Heights. He has recognized the Golan Heights as a part of Israel. That annexation was very devastating news to receive, especially as I was trying my best and working on finding the route for my daughter, 8 years old at that moment. As I mentioned before, anger, sadness, and disappointment have made me feel as all the beautiful and bright color in the world has vanished. But then I looked at my daughter so full of joy, jumping from rock to rock, from flower to another, without even paying any attention to Trump annexation. So at that moment, I felt I need to change my way of thinking. And I started to think about all the positive that I had in my life. I started thinking about a Palestinian man with the name of Ramzi Abu Radwan, and how he used to throw rocks on tanks when he was a child, but he was able to channel his anger and teach children a music. I needed to think of Jeff Halper, the American author, who was able to channel his anger and help with rebuilding Palestinian homes that were destroyed by bulldozers. I needed to think of Rachel Corrie and how she tried her best to stop the demolition of the homes in Gaza. Now, with the death of George Floyd, tyrannies that we see in Trump, Assad, and Netanyahu, it will be so easy for all of us just to give up. But we are all in need of the effort to keep alive the hope. We all should continue saying, we refuse to be silent. We refuse to be defeated. People like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rachel Corrie, Christine Saada, Ahmed Ariqat will continue to die until we wake up. One of the things that we all have to be learned by now, that nothing will change in Palestine until we change our mindset and we start doing things here to change things here in the US. And what's some of the things that we can do here to make the change? First, please come with me to Palestine. Join our group to Palestine. We have a wonderful group that going to Palestine in the holiday season, inshallah, God willing. Come and see with your own eyes the injustice from which the Palestinian people have suffered for so long. Come with me and meet the courageous people who are struggling for better future to their children. Second, please consider standing in support to H.R. 2407, a bill that will protect Palestinian children from being detained and tortured. Third, contact your elected official and urge them to stand against occupation, annexation, and any ongoing of the human rights in Palestine. Again, Sana.
Assalamu alaikum.
Pick her
It
up.
was called Palestine, and its name later became Palestine, and it will continue to be called Palestine.
Hello. So before we begin with personal stories and a call to action, I want to just start by saying, oftentimes if you are in opposition of the state of Israel, you are called an anti-Semite, equating Zionism with Semitism. Zionism started as a Christian project, not a Jewish one, in the beginning of the 19th century, stemming from the idea that Jewish people were to go to Palestine and in turn they would convert back to Christianity. The initial meaning of Zionism itself is in fact anti-Semitic. After facing extreme discrimination and persecution, the Jewish people began to adopt the idea of Zionism, trying to equate Judaism as a romanticized version of nationalism. Mind you, while this occurred at the end of the 19th century, there were also thousands of Jews, both Orthodox and secular, who denounced this idea as they believe it goes against the will of God. The Zionists of Europe began the settler colonial movement into Palestine, claiming that they are indigenous to the Palestinian land. The Zionist settlers embarked on an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian population, destroying homes and towns. To emphasize, anti-Zionism is an ideology against the racial discrimination and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people through the State of Israel, whereas anti-Semitism is a hostility to or prejudice against Jews. One is an ideology, one is a religion. They are not the same, nor are they interchangeable. Following the conflict, there have been proposals of potential solutions, including a two-state solution of an independent Palestine alongside an independent Israel, and a one-state solution which will give equal rights to the people no matter their race or religion. The two-state solution does not equate the right to statehood of the Palestinian people for the right they have to their own land. The Palestinian refugees have equated to over 7 million because of this conflict. A two-state solution is still being pondered as it gives more time for Israel to annex parts of Palestine, as they have said to do starting July 1st. The resurgence of violence and destruction of Palestine and its people with the total rule of Israel is exactly why a two-state solution is not possible. A one-state solution is the alternative solution needed by the Palestinian people. We must fight to give the Palestinian people the right to statehood and sovereignty to their own land. We cannot stand idly while Palestine is being ripped away from its people. Next, I'm going to introduce Mohammed Hamdan.
Thank you, Basil. And thank you all for coming out, and I especially want to say thank you for your patience and your attention while we educate you on this stuff, because I do know it can be daunting to learn about all this history about this amazing country. So I would like to tell everyone about how Palestine, and especially Israel, is causing an apartheid on our people. So apartheid is defined as a policy or system of segregation or discrimination on the grounds of race, ethnicity, or any other identity. The United Nations Economic and Social Commission stated in March of 2017 that on the basis of overwhelming evidence, Israel is guilty of the crime of apartheid and urged a swift action to end what they are doing. The reason behind this declaration by the UN is that Israel carries out acts prohibited by the UN Apartheid Convention constantly and every single day. This includes forcible transfer of Palestinians, forcing them to refuge in in nearby countries, even as far out as America. They kick them out of their homes, they destroy their homes. Next, they prevent them from returning ever to their house without the need of checkpoints and walls and all of this, depriving the Palestinians of their human rights and their identity along with that. They also deny the freedom of movement between each of the Palestinian villages through the uses of the walls and the checkpoints, which take hours and hours and daunts the human being and hurts them as they try to go through. They clearly have restrictions on voting inside of Arab communities and inside of Palestinian communities, which caused the Israeli Zionists and all those who are elected officials to just continue to grab office and to continue to enact this apartheid on us. Finally, they murder, they torture, they unlawfully imprison, and they persecute all the Palestinians because they oppose this apartheid. And what else are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to accept that this apartheid is happening on us? I don't think so. All in all, the policy is being passed, the wall is being built, and the systematic racism by the Israeli government imposed on the Arab Palestinians forces them to be marginalized and their human rights ignored in their own native country. To draw parallels to the most iconic apartheid the world has ever seen in South Africa, Black South Africans saw similar treatment and policies as the Palestinians do right now. The only country not to denounce the actions of the white South Africans who enacted this apartheid was the United States of America. And it's appalling and amazing that I can see that America has not denounced this apartheid yet. They haven't denounced the apartheid in Israel. Thank you. I'm also going to bring up Basil. Our Youth President Basil, and he will continue to talk about this education.
All right.
Alright, hopefully that's better. Sorry, one more background, then I swear it'll be more interesting, inshallah. But, so Gaza. So pretty much after the long decade land grab that Had was talking about earlier in the history, the Palestinian land was allocated to two parts, so parts of the West Bank and then Gaza. So, I mean, they're both in poor condition, but Gaza's it's a different level. So Gaza is a small strip of land on the Mediterranean Peninsula. It's next to Egypt. It's about twice the size of DC, Washington DC. So it's allocated to Palestinians, yet it's completely under Israeli control. So, I mean, we're talking about deeply impoverished, unemployment rate, one of the highest in the world, the most densely populated place in the entire world, and they live in complete isolation. So it's a place where electricity limited to no more than 4 hours per day for each family household. 1 in 10 households get clean water, and even that's not all the time. There's specific times when they're not allowed to get that water. And there are random power outages all the time. And the coronavirus only furthered that issue. I mean, we're talking about a place that has 40 hospital beds for over 2 million people. That's what, I can't do that math off the top of my head. But it's for the most densely populated place in the world, that's absolutely nuts. So, and we're adding in that Israel goes in every single day with tortures, kidnaps, beats, sends in bombings every single day to these people. They're completely helpless. They have no military equipment. They can't fight back in any way. And we're just talking about the fact that Donald Trump over here in the US just cut $300 million more funding to them. Even the funding that does get inside Gaza, it's not going to actually go to the people in Gaza. Israel intercepts it. I mean, I think we all know that. But this blockade, it doesn't allow resources in, it doesn't let resources out. And it's nuts because 70% of the people who are actually in Gaza aren't even from Gaza. They're pretty much located in different places of Palestine, but they had to take refuge there when Israel came in and destroyed everything. And they're not allowed to go back to their homelands because they don't allow people in Gaza to leave in and out. They have no right of return. So people who live, 40 minutes? Okay, a little more, a couple of hours away from their homelands can't even go back because they can't return to their homes. They can't return to their families. And we're talking about a place that is the most densely populated, so the people who actually don't get the medical assistance that they need in the very second, they can't go to better, they don't have the best medical equipment, obviously, so they can't go to better hospitals. So people who could have been saved if they got taken to a better hospital, transported right over there to Jerusalem in Israel, in Palestine, could have been saved, but they died. They passed away in Gaza, and there are millions of stories of this. Not millions, a lot of stories. Look it up online. But the psychological toll that you can take on the people in Gaza, it's absolutely absurd. The suicide rates, the depression rates are off the charts. And if you want to learn more about it, look up ifamericans.knew.org. It's a great resource. But that's just a little background on Gaza. So right now we're getting into more interesting part of it. So we're going to go to the personal stories. So I want to introduce Hadi Ali, who's going to talk about BLM solidarity.
Can you guys hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Alright guys, so I like high energy. We're a little bit quiet. So I'm going to start us off by repeating the words of a black liberation artist whose name is Assata Shakur. Assata Shakur is currently seeking asylum in Cuba after being wrongfully convicted and imprisoned by the United States government. So I want you to repeat after me. We have a duty to fight for our people.
We have a duty to fight for our people.
We have a duty to win.
We have a duty to win.
We must love each other and protect each other.
We must love each other and protect each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Thank you guys. So I want to talk a little bit about why Palestinian liberation is inherently tied to black liberation. So for a lot of people, right now is a call to action for black lives. We understand that black lives matter. We understand that the police state and the prison state are oppressing black people. But it is impossible to truly support black liberation without supporting Palestinian liberation. In fact, our revolutionaries, Malcolm X, Huey Newton, Angela Davis, they all understood that the same white supremacy that is killing us here is the same white supremacy that is uplifting a colonial state in Palestine. It is the same white supremacy that allows Palestinian children to be imprisoned and tortured, and for Palestinian land to be stolen and occupied. And so if you do not support Palestine, you cannot support black liberation. You cannot believe that Black Lives Matter while uplifting a foreign government whose police come here and train our police how to kill us, whose police come here and say, this is how you steal from them. This is how you murder them and convince everybody it's okay. And so the fight for Palestinian liberation and the fight for black lives is intrinsically the same exact fight. If we allow a settler colonial state, if we allow white supremacy to steal Palestine, to try to erase its people and culture, and to try to uplift capitalism over lives, we are accepting the same fate here. And in fact, as Americans, speaking specifically to African Americans, a community that I'm a part of, we have a duty because our tax dollars are funding that genocide. And so while we're here saying defund the police, while we're here saying tear down the prisons, while we're here saying invest back into communities, that fight begins with an understanding that we must overturn the systems that uplift these dollars over lives in the first place. If we're going to boycott police officers, if we're going to boycott prisons, if we're going to boycott prison laborers, we have to, at the very least that we can do, to subscribe to BDS. It's the very least that we can do. To say that yes, my tax dollars, I have no control over that. But I will not be a willful funder of occupation. I will not be somebody who is complicit in white supremacy abroad. If you are not here for transnational liberation, you are not here for liberation of any people. Because as soon as you legitimize Israel, as soon as you legitimize murder of people who don't look like you, you're accepting the same fate for you and your communities here. In 2014, when Michael Brown was murdered by Ferguson police officers, it was organizers in Palestine that were sending messages of solidarity back to America, telling us how to deal with tear gas, telling us how to deal with a militarized police state. When the Black Panther Party was organizing, it was organizers in Palestine that they reached out to and talked to about mutual aid. Palestinians live under the worst imagination of the carceral state possible. And so our people, Black people, understand that our liberation is tied, and therefore our struggles must be tied. It is not historical, it is now. In the weeks that just passed, when George Floyd was murdered, Breonna Taylor was murdered, a man named Ahmed Al-Attack was also murdered in Palestine. And it's the same exact narrative of him being violent, of somebody fearing for their lives, of somebody fearing for their occupation, that has allowed them to justify their murder here, the same way they justify our murders here. So the fight for Black liberation, the fight for Palestinian liberation is transnational. It goes across borders, it goes across ethnicity, it goes across religions. Because if our people are gonna get free, we gotta start talking to each other now. White supremacy is already working together. The same way that America, as a settler colonial project, sends money to them, in the same way they send their police officers here to teach ours how to kill people, we must begin organizing across borders. We must begin investing ourselves in the lives of people who do not look like us. Because without that, none of us will be free. And so when you leave today, I strongly urge you, if you're going to organize for a prison boycott, contact SJP. They have their resource for us. Contact whoever local people you know who are fighting for Palestine and say, how can we do this together? How do we force our institutions to decolonize? How do we push our people towards transnational liberation? Because once we're together, nobody can stop us. So one more time, y'all. We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to win.
We have a duty to win.
We must love each other and protect each other.
We must love each other and protect each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'm gonna wipe this down because Corona's still a thing.
Also, there's water at the side table. Please feel free to take some. It's really hot out.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm very proud to call myself an ally to the Palestinian people during these devastating times. Can you hear me now? I'm very proud to call myself an ally to the Palestinian people during these devastating times. Only part of it is the horrific and inhumane living conditions that these people are forced to live with every day with no end in sight. Some UConn students...
Into the mic. Into the mic. Yep. There you go.
I'm very proud to call myself an ally to the Palestinian people during these devastating times. Only part of it is the horrific and inhumane living conditions that these people are forced to live with every day with no end in sight. Some UConn students went to visit these refugees, and the stories they had to tell broke my heart. They have limited or no access to basic needs, and little is done to help. This woman is...
There we go.
They have limited or no access to basic needs, and little is done to help. This woman described how the bathroom was far from their tent, from the tent that they lived in, and it was just a hole in the ground. I can only imagine how frightening it is to go to the bathroom at night when it's pitch black, especially if you're a young girl. Furthermore, sometimes they had no access to hot water in the winter, so showering regularly was a challenge. Simple things like a hospital visit is a faraway dream because it's hard for them to get a job, and even harder for them to have a living wage. There are so many more. And it not only made me realize how privileged I am, but how much more to free Palestine. And now I introduce Haida.
Hi again. So I'm just gonna share just a short personal story about visiting Palestine and just the experience of being born there and visiting back and how it was like. Whenever I visit Palestine, yet the world somehow turns a blind eye and denies existence to a place that I was born. Passing through checkpoints just to get from Ramallah in the West Bank to Jerusalem can sometimes take hours when it should only really take 10 minutes. I've seen young Muslim men being turned away by Israeli soldiers from the doors of Al-Aqsa simply because they appear as if they are a threat. Yet Israeli forces storm Al-Aqsa, attacking worshippers every now and then simply because they can and no one is stopping them. When I see Israeli settlements built on Palestinian land, I can't help but think about whose home was there or whose land it was. Or when I walk through the streets of the old city, I see homes that belong to Palestinians that were there well before 1948. I see shops in the old city struggling to make ends meet because there is so little left. I've seen children playing along border walls in hopes that one day they can play on the other side. I've seen Arabic writing being removed from street signs in an attempt to ethnically cleanse what is left. I've seen traditional Palestinian and Middle Eastern foods being labeled as Israeli culture. It saddens me that Palestine has not only been ignored, but erased from history to the point where some people do not even know that it is a country. We must keep the stories of Palestinians and the history of Palestine alive. We must join the fight with Palestinians because our voices and our actions are our strength, and it only gets stronger as we unite. I will not be silenced when I hear cries of Palestinians longing to be free. Do not underestimate the blood of a Palestinian, as it comes with immense pride, strength, and resilience. Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish said, on this earth, there is that which deserves life, and that is exactly what Palestinians are fighting for their life in hopes of seeing the country they know flourish again. Thank you. And now I'll introduce Muhammad Hamdan, that's also going to speak on his experiences.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you for supporting my country. Thank you for showing up. It means really a lot to me that there are so many people here of all different creeds and colors that, want to support my country. I'd like to gauge on into the audience. How many people here are immigrants? How many people here are first generation, born here? All right, now how many people here are Christian? How many here are Muslim? How many here are Jewish? And how many here are atheists or not mentioned? All right, so as you can see, this isn't a one person kind of thing. This isn't everyone kind of thing. This is a human issue. All right, I want to get that out of the way. Now let me talk to you about my experiences of being Palestinian American. I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I lived there 4 years, and then I moved to Connecticut. And I didn't first see anything about Palestine until I went with my family around the age of 9. I was in 4th grade. And I'm very glad my parents showed me the world and the country that I come from at a very young age, because when you're that young, you don't look around and see the true terror around you. I was able to go and see my country. I was able to go and see my capital. I was able to see where my parents, my dad was born, where my grandma lived, where my cousins live, and where they still live. And I was able to see the beauty in it. I was able to walk around with my cousins Anas, my cousins Amir, my cousins Hatem. I was able to see how awesome it was to just go to a local place and pick up falafel. It was awesome. Other than that, you hang out with your family, you drink coffee late at night. You don't see what's actually happening in the world because I was so young. I didn't realize what was really going on until I went there the second time. When I went there the second time, I was a junior in high school. And up until then, every single day I'd come home and I'd ask my parents, "Hi, how's Palestine? How's our family? How's all of this?" And every once in a while they'd say, "Hey, do you remember your cousin Ahmed? Remember your cousin Alauddin? They're in prison now." There's no reason why they're in prison. The Israelis just decided time to imprison them. They look like they're scary and they look like they'll destroy our country. There's no right to peace there. They just get arrested. And it happens over and over and over again. You get numb to it. I don't know how many times my parents told me my cousins have been arrested. I don't know how many times more I'll hear about it. And I'm sure it'll be in the at least hundreds, at least tens. But I'm hopeful. I'm starting to not feel as numb to this sense of oppression and a sense of oppression anymore. I'm starting to see hope finally inside the room in the air of Palestine. So now let me talk to you about the second time I went there. I was about 16, 17, and now you see the terror. You go through the checkpoints, you go through the Israeli borders, and you see, wow, these people really don't care about who I am or that I am a human being. They look at you, they laugh at you. IDF soldiers are on the border and they say with a smile, "Welcome to Israel." It's so appalling. It hurts me, it makes me feel like an animal to them. And then you go to the town that you once knew, and I only went there within 7 years since the last time I went, and you notice nothing changed. All the stores are in the exact same location, as if there is no development, because they're not allowed to develop. They're restricted into this community by Israel, and they're not allowed to develop. They're not allowed to change or advance in this community. They're just stuck inside of this world, and they just can't develop, I guess. I already said that. But to continue on, as Hala said, when she said that she went to visit Al-Aqsa and she saw men being thrown out at the border, I was one of those guys. I went there with my family, my brother, my cousins, my mother, my sister, my dad, and they said, "No, you can't come in." We asked why. "We're American, we have our US passport right here." They say, "No, you're Palestinian, you have a Hawiyah, you have a Palestinian ID, you're not allowed in this country, you're not allowed in Israel, get the hell out." Now, leading up to this inside of Ramallah, there's chains, there's doors, and there's cages to try to funnel you away. And we went all through that, straight to the wall, and they still kicked us out because we're animals to them. It just doesn't make sense to me. Turning back to this hope that I now see in this world. Now that I guess coronavirus and all this is happening, the Black Lives Matter movement, it's very appealing to me that people are finally seeing what is happening in the world. They're finally seeing the oppression and they're finally trying to end it. And it's very sad that it had to coincide with George Floyd, Ahmed Arkat, all these very sad deaths, including Breonna Taylor as well. But if oppression is analogous to a book, I felt like I was stuck on the same page of oppression for many, many years of my life. And we're finally turning this page. I'm finally seeing hope. I'm seeing the people around us, and I'm seeing that we want things to change, and things should change. And I'm hopeful that things will change. Thank you very much. Up next, I'm bringing up Basil again.
Hello again. All right, so what I want to talk about is a little personal story about me and my connection to Palestine. So I'm Palestinian Syrian, half-half, and my mom was born in Jerusalem, Palestine. But the first thing that she did, the first thing that she did when she was born? The first thing that happened was that she moved to Saudi Arabia. She moved to Saudi Arabia to find a more safe, more reliable, less unpredictable place to live in. And that was the last Israeli soldiers coming at me right there with the guns raised. And not even to mention the fact that actually just to get into the country, I had to go through an entire terrifying process plus interrogation just to get in. I say my mom's born in Jerusalem, whoop, the sirens go and everything, and they come at me, and I go for like, a couple-hour interrogation. And the only thing that's protecting me in that such a scenario is the fact that I have an American passport. They have to respect Americans over there because we're like the puppeteer behind the scenes doing everything. So the Palestinians there, there was the first time I've been there, and I was treated better than Palestinians who've been living there for generations. I speak Arabic and I get weird looks. There's like a passive-aggressive atmosphere around me. I change to English, immediately it goes. They're welcoming, I don't know how you say it in Hebrew, but welcome. And it seriously kills me to know that my aunt, I never even met this woman before I went on this trip. I had no contact with her. I didn't even know she existed. The woman who took me in, fed me, took me places, bought me things, she has to live in a world where she can go walking outside doing nothing and being up just for being Palestinian. Where she has no rights, no voter rights as Palestinian, where any single day, at any single time, a construction team can come out and show up outside her door and say, "Get out, we're making a settlement out of this place." Lose your home and everything. So, this stuff happens. As you see it on videos, you think like maybe it's staged or anything. No, this stuff happens. I see it in front of my eyes when I went there. It's all just random acts of aggression just to instill a sense of fear. But the one thing that keeps me going, knowing that we have counters this fear, I never realized it until my cousin right next to me, she was like standing up to this group of Israeli soldiers, preventing us from going to Al-Aqsa Mosque just to practice our own religion. But the one thing that keeps me going is knowing that Palestinians they're strong, they're so strong, and they're proud of their land, their culture, and everything. Being Palestinian, it's a mindset. You know, it's a metaphor for the struggle, the resistance, the never back down mentality that we carry in our own lives. It's amazing. And you guys probably know the song Dummy Palestinian. It means my blood is Palestinian. It's a very popular Palestinian song. You've been to a wedding, you probably heard it. Arab wedding. But this guy repeats it over and over again in the song. Dummy Palestinian, 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 over and over again. And why? Because he's ingraining it in the minds of the Israelis who oppress him, the Americans who allow this oppression, and then his fellow Palestinians who they need to hear it for themselves sometimes. Saying your blood is Palestinian is synonymous, the same thing as saying I'm not going to back down. I'm going to go to Jahannam, hell and back before I let you win, before I drop. And we all have it. That's the beauty of it. It's not just Dummy Palestinian because my mom was born there. No, Damkum Palestinian. Your blood is Palestinian, all of you. And so what I'm saying is, if we fight here, fight to break the system here, where we allow Israel to commit all these human rights violations, which there are no slapback. If we fight here, where we give more military funding to Israel than every single other country we give to the entire world combined. So if we fight here, we know for sure that the Palestinians are going to be fighting over there. And if you care about human rights, it is your responsibility, it is our responsibility to get behind the Palestinian cause. Aid is great, donations are great, but the one thing that's actually going to get people past and leave them on a track to success over there is policy change. Like I said, we're the puppeteer behind the scenes. If we change things here, I guarantee you things will change over there. Just a little funding would change things in a day. But we need to help our Palestinian brothers and sisters over there who are fighting for their lives against a state that does not want them to have one. A thief of land, history, culture, even food. Sabra, that was disgusting. But it's a place that shows that a threat to human rights violations anywhere is a threat to human rights violations everywhere. So I'm asking you to channel what I just said, what everybody said, and what's still to come. You know, make a difference. I mean, circulation and awareness, that's what we want. You may not think you make a difference when you say a tiny little thing or post an Instagram story, but eventually it's going to get there. It's going to, you go from one person to one person to one person to one person. Eventually it can actually go to a politician who actually makes things happen. Not that you can't, but he can go directly into law. And you know who started that? You know who did that? That was you. You did that. You put the idea in everybody's heads. Just a little talk can do that. So you can make a change for yourself, or you can make a change for other people. But, so Dummy Palestinian, you know what happens when blood doesn't get its oxygen? The human being dies. So we're legitimately being suffocated. We're trying to get erased from history. You know that if you heard about the Bela Hadid thing the other day. I won't get into that, but it was absurd. But this right now, this is the first real strong push in a really long time. It's been stagnant for so long. And you know, it gets your blood pumping, it gets your head going, it's exciting. And it's great because now is the time to ride the wave. Now is the time to show the Palestinian cause our full support. And you know that they're showing it over there. You see all the BLM solidarity right here. Just, they appreciate what we're giving them and they give it right back. So what I'm asking is to act on everything you hear today, absorb what you hear, and do something. Because without actual action, in a couple of years, we may not see a place called Palestine. We may not have our country, our land. Because as Palestinians, what my mom always taught me is that for us Palestinians, it's not a matter of if, we'll get our land back, and if Palestine will be free, it's a matter of when Palestine will be free and when we get our land back. So let's do free Palestine! Alright, and so now we're going to have Azla come up to talk about a tribute and also Kashmiri solidarity.
I'm standing here today with the sheer heartache of having to share a story of yet another fallen Palestinian. Ahmed Iraqat, a 27-year-old Palestinian man, was on his way from Abu Dis to pick up his mom and his sister from the salon in Bethlehem for his sister's wedding that day. Mind you, this is nearly 2 weeks before his own wedding. Ahmed reached a checkpoint in the occupied West Bank where he lost control of his car as it jerked. Note that the armed Israeli soldiers were behind barricades. Immediately after his car jerked, Israeli soldiers began open fire on Ahmed, shooting him multiple times. Israeli soldiers then proceeded to let Ahmed bleed out in the street for an hour and a half while not allowing his father nor the Palestinian Crescent access to a helpless Ahmed. Israel proceeded to blame Ahmed for his own death, inhumanely withholding his body from his family. Ahmed Iraq was killed in cold blood. Just a few weeks prior, on May 30th, 2020, Iyad al-Halak, a 32-year-old autistic Palestinian man, was on his way to school for special needs students in the historic city of Old Jerusalem. Iyad was shot by Israeli soldiers at the checkpoint while his caretaker repeatedly pleaded that he was disabled. As a wounded Iyad proceeded to plead that he is with the caretaker, an Israeli officer mistakenly thought Iyad had a weapon and fatally shot him. Iyad and Ahmed were both unarmed, innocent Palestinians living in their homeland and occupied by Israel. It is not a case of a few bad armed officers, just like it's not a case of a few bad cops. It's a systemized apartheid system discriminating against and oppressing the entire population of the Palestinian people within their own homes, on their own land. When does picking up your sister from the salon or being autistic warrant a license for your death? Thousands of Palestinians have been killed by Israeli soldiers to the point where it has become normalized, followed by no investigation, no accountability, and no remorse on the part of the Israeli people and the military. I ask you all today to take a moment of silence to honor the lives of Ahmed Iraq, Iyad al-Halak, and the thousands of Palestinian lives that have been taken by Israeli soldiers. Thank you. It does not take being Palestinian to understand why we must help free Palestine. As someone who is Kashmiri, I'm not Palestinian. I recognize the injustices taking place within Palestine. Kashmir itself has been a disputed territory for decades and has been illegally occupied since 1947. Currently, it is occupied with over 500,000 Indian soldiers, becoming the most militarized place in the world. In August of 2019, Kashmir was forced into lockdown with no outside communication, no outside aid, and they have been that way since August. It is currently July. What's happening in Kashmir is similar to what's happening in Palestine. Nelson Mandela said, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. So we cannot fight for a free and liberated Kashmir without fighting for black liberation, without fighting for the liberation of the Muslims being held in concentration camps in China, without fighting for a free and liberated Palestine." Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Erna, who will be talking about Bosnian solidarity along with a call of action.
Hey guys, so I want to start off by giving us a quote by this Palestinian activist. We remembered him this week since it's been 72 years since his death. His name was Ghassan Kanafani. That he said the Palestinian cause is not a cause for Palestinians only, but a cause for every revolutionary wherever he is, as a cause for the exploited and oppressed masses in our era. I'm not Palestinian, but I'm a Bosnian immigrant and a daughter of Bosnian refugees and genocide survivors. Yesterday, my people remembered the 25th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide. We say never forget Srebrenica, so it never happens again to no one and nowhere. And that's why I resonate with Kanafani's saying. He made me realize why I had such a strong connection to the Palestinian cause and why so many other Bosnians did as well. Bosnians would chant Palestina at soccer games, protest, and make signs against apartheid, and realize the human rights violation happening in Palestine even when their own people, when their own rights were being taken away. Bosnians especially now fight for the Palestinian cause even more because we vow to never forget our oppression so it doesn't happen again to anyone else. My people were displaced, killed, ethnically cleansed for their beliefs and want for their independence. They were killed for their names as well. Most of the men in my family are dead because of the ethnic killings. Genocide was committed against us. And the same is going for the Palestinian people. Genocide is happening to the Palestinian people, and we don't need stages or analysts to tell us if it's not or if it is. We can tell that it's happening when we see 7.2 million Palestinian refugees. We can see it happening with the systematic murders of Ahmed and Ayad. We can see it with the blockade on Gaza. We can see it with the constant annexation. We can see it with all these violations and crimes against humanity and the apartheid state is doing to the Palestinian people. But we won't let this continue. We won't let Palestine be violated and annexed. On behalf of the entire Yukon SJP, we are calling for the state and for you guys to take action. We are calling for our representatives, our senators, our governors, to block any vote on the HR 1837. While Israel threatens the further annexation of West Bank land, this bill would write into law an additional $38 billion in USA into Israel over 10 years, bringing it to the whole cumulative whole of $500 billion since 1948. Oppose the S3176, which is the same as HR 1837, or any other bill which does not hold Israel accountable for adherence to international law and human rights and which locks in military aid over a long term. Ask them to show support and sign HR 2407. This bill promotes the human rights of Palestinian children. Join your other representatives, such as AOC, and sign the letter in which you oppose the annexation of Palestine. Stop funding the Israeli military. Stop giving Israel $3.8 billion of our tax dollars. Stop funding human rights abusers. We are calling for the people, for you guys, to hold these leaders accountable. Email them, call your representatives, call them to stop funding the apartheid state. We call you to be part of the BDS movement. Boycott, divest, and sanction all corporations, organizations, brands that support and aid the Israeli government and its war crimes. The goal of BDS is to apply pressure and make sure Israel complies with international law. This does not oppose the Jewish population, but rather so the Zionist regime that continues its settler colonialism. Donate to Palestine, its people. Donate to Gaza. Children there are well, food, water, and electricity. They need our help. Sign petitions. No matter how effective or ineffective they are, they show that we have a voice. Sign the petition to stop the annexation of Palestine. And sign the petition that Yukon SJP started to call Yukon to stop the funding and cut programs to Israel. Educate yourselves on our issues. Read books by amazing Palestinians like Murad Baghouti, Kanafani, Darwish, and so much more. Advocate, support, and share. It takes 10 seconds to share this protest on your social media. It takes 10 seconds to share the Palestinian cause. But it also takes 10 seconds for an Israeli soldier to take away a Palestinian's life, and we don't want that. So keep on sharing, keep on educating, and keep on fighting for the Palestinian cause. And I want you guys to join me for the start of the rally, and join me in Okay. No to annexation.
No to annexation.
Palestinian liberation.
Palestinian liberation.
No to annexation.
No to annexation.
Palestinian liberation.
Palestinian liberation.
No to annexation.
No to annexation.
Palestinian liberation.
Palestinian liberation.
Thank you all for coming.
So Bruno already started it a little bit, but I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone for coming. Thank you for coming to support the Palestinian cause, and thank you for listening to all of our stories. It is everyone that came out today that's going to create a change. It's our duty to raise the alarm and end the occupation. We will not be silenced. It's time to be the change and let our voices be heard. So please join us in a short march around Bushnell Park, and remember there is water on the side.